Hello and welcome to Roll Call, a primary debate among the 4 Republican candidates seeking their party's nomination to be the next state superintendent of public instruction. My name is Trace Savage. I'm the editor-in-chief of nondoc.com. We're an online journalism publication based in Oklahoma City here. I'm on stage tonight with Storme Jones, co-moderating with News 9.
Yeah, we also want to tell you that News 9 is streaming this right now on news9.com and newson6.com, as well as our Facebook pages, Non-Doc's Facebook pages, and the other media partners like the Frontier as well. Frontier will also be providing a fact check throughout the night.
That's wonderful. As you might know, debates take a little bit of time and money to produce, so I want to thank the financial sponsors of our 2022 debate series, the State Chamber of Oklahoma, AARP Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Public School Resource Center, the advocacy firm of McSpadden, Milner, and Robinson, the Oklahoma Association of Realtors, and Overman Legal Group. That's a lot of sponsors, but that helps us make these events happen. Thank you so much. Oh, look, we have a sponsor. Go get a table. Go get a seat, wherever you want to be. Okay, great. Storme, I think you have something else to add.
And we do want to remind folks of 2 things. One, please consider going and sharing those Facebook streams right now so your friends and neighbors can be as informed as you are for showing up tonight. And second, please go ahead and silence your cell phones. One will inevitably always go off.
Absolutely, never fails. I do need to say this to the audience. Please hold your applause until we reach the end of each round of questions. And please be respectful. We had some truly horrible behavior from some folks in the audience at the Attorney General's debate last week, and I'm just not going to tolerate something like that again. So I will ask people to, be respectful. If you are a repeat offender, I'm going to have the security ask you to leave. And if the whole crowd just can't control themselves like a group of first graders, I will clear this room, we'll pause the debate, and then we'll resume it later. I don't think we're going to have to do that. Do you, Storme?
No, this is the 5th one of these we've done in the past 2 weeks, Trace.
It's the last one before the primary on the 28th, and I'm ready for that to be over.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about the format for tonight. As we talked with the candidates earlier, each of them will get a 90-second opening statement, and then they'll also have 90-second closing statements at the end. We'll have 3 rounds of questions between then. Candidates, a similar warning to you. I don't really want to have to deal with going over time significantly. Just finish your thought. Your timekeepers are down here. They've got fancy new signs for you, so it should be easy to read. We drew some numbers earlier to determine the order of opening statements. April Grace will go first. Bill Crozier will go second. John Cox will go third. And Ryan Walters will go fourth. Dr. Grace, 90 seconds to you.
All right. Well, thank you. Whoa, that's loud. My name is April Grace, and I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm a 33-year educator, and so that's part of the reason why I'm interested in this race. I spent 12 years in a classroom, 7 years in building level leadership, 8 years as an assistant superintendent, and 6 years as a superintendent. And when I think about the biggest why for me, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter, and what I want is to ensure that the future of Oklahoma public education is bright. I want to make sure that we are focused forward and that we're doing everything we can to get this next generation of learners ready for workforce and career development. And we want to do that as we enter them into high school. And so the next 8 years, she's going to pre-K next year. The next 8 years will be exceptionally important in her education. And I want to make sure that I'm doing my part to lay that foundation for our state and continue the trajectory forward. I think we can all agree that there's nothing more important than public education when we think of it as a bedrock to career and workforce development as well as economic development in our state. So I just want to do my part in serving Oklahomans and continue doing that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Crozier, 90 seconds to you.
Okay, I was trying to watch the time sign, but her hand was covering up the minutes, so I guess I have total time, right? William Crozier. I always teach people how to spell my name or say it. When I teach my special ed students, I say it's Mr. Crozier now, C-R-O-Z-I-E-R. We had this nomination before for Superintendent of Public Instruction, so I decided to run again now that education has become an issue. I have a lot of items that we can look at. My background is buried. I got the sheets over there. It's not as big as an encyclopedia, but it's close. Some of my friends say, Crozier, have you done all these things? I said, yes, I haven't died yet. I got more to do. So I can build airplanes, teach English and history, political science. So I can give you a lesson in political science here. Politics, the study of who gets what. What are the 3 main categories? Who wins? The money, the money, and the money. And the candidate, and the candidate. I got 30 seconds left. Thank you.
We'll save that 30 seconds. Everybody can get to dinner faster. Mr. Cox, 90 seconds to you, sir.
Okay, Dr. John Cox, and I'm just excited to be here to talk about public education and be an advocate for public education. This is my 36th year finishing up in public ed and 28 as a superintendent and principal. And I just see the need to be out there and really advocate for our kids. Bottom line, I'm in this for our children, and that really should be the only reason anybody runs for this position. But this is so vital to Oklahoma. This is a pivotal point to what we can do for our children. And so I want to have somebody in there who has knowledge, who has superintendent knowledge, that has training. I have all the certifications. I have 12 certifications on my teaching certificate. I teach all the core classes it takes to be a school superintendent. I'm trusted across the state. I'm on 2 different boards, one that covers 500 school districts, and I'm chairman of another board that has 541 school districts in there. So I'm trusted across the state. And as tonight, as we go through our questions, I just want you to think about, does experience really matter, and does trust matter? And so those are the 2 issues that we're going to be talking about tonight. So just so proud to be here to represent you and our public schools.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Mr. Walters, 90 seconds to you.
My name is Ryan Walters. My background is as a public school teacher from McAllister, Oklahoma, and a parent of 4 young kids, and I am proud to serve as Governor Stitt's Secretary of Education. And what I've seen is an education system here in the state of Oklahoma that ranks us 49th in student outcomes. What we're doing isn't working for our kids. We have to do things differently. And what I think we have to do is we have to have high expectations on our learners. I think we've had a far left-wing Democrat superintendent that has pushed low performance in our schools. I think that every single child is capable of incredible things because of their God-given potential. And we need to have high expectations on our kids. I also think that no one knows better for their kids than their mom and their dad. And we need to do more to empower parents by introducing more school choice, more options for parents, and get parents more involved in their kids' education. And I believe we have to start championing Oklahoma values in our schools, reject left-wing indoctrination, and ensure that our students are told the story of America, our values, our history, so that every child can be inspired by that history, so that we can be a leader in education. If we champion conservative values in our schools, if we have high expectations in our kids and we put parents in the driver's seat of our kids' education, we can absolutely be a leader in our kids' in education, and our kids can have a tremendous pathway towards success. That's why I'm running.
Thank you very much to all the candidates. All right, here we're going to practice that applause. There we go. Great. We're going to go to our first category called the assignment. We're going to have 4 questions in this category. Well, maybe 5, who knows. And we will have 1 minute for each candidate to answer each question. Storme.
Yeah, we have plenty of political and policy questions coming up, but we want to start with this one. It's going to be a hand-raising question, and then we'll talk to each of you about it. Think back to your time in school as a student. Raise your hand if you were ever suspended, received a detention, got a detriment, or had your name written in the doghouse. And then we'll ask you what you did and what you learned from it after that. So, did anyone ever receive a detention? I know I did.
Hey,
Secretary Walters, the only one.
I will dive right into this. This is the best opening question I think we've ever gotten. So my mom is here. I have an incredible mother. My wife and mother are here. My mom's going to remember this story. I had a 4th grade teacher, and we were supposed to do a book report, and I didn't do it. I wasn't going to do it. I had better things to do over the weekend, so I didn't do it. So she called my mother and told her that I didn't do it and said I wasn't going to do it. And my mother had a good talk with me. And then my teacher had a good talk with me on Monday. But then she sat me down and we found this book. And it was a weird, it was an alien life form book. Because everything was boring. I was that kid there. And I got so into the book. I got so into the report. I remember this layout that we did on a map of every chapter. And I went into the class and presented it. And from that moment on, I had to learn a love of reading. And I had that teacher that took that moment where she could have just ripped me and just been super critical of me, and she uses that learning moment to introduce me to a book that I loved, that I dug into. And so, yeah, I remember that, and I'm sure my mom does too.
Yes, sir.
Mine was a little different. I was the good kid in school since my father was a teacher. I even have one of my dad's ex-students here, Mr. Scotus. Good to see you. Thank you for talking to me. So the only time I really got in trouble was we had a little store where we go eat lunch, Cokes were a nickel, hot dogs were a dime, hamburgers were 15 cents. And for some reason, the guys in the back of the little bitty store, we call it the little store, were having a fight. So I thought, well, I'll just watch the fight. I wasn't participating in it. And we got in trouble later, even though it was off campus. So we're all going to get licks. Here was the quietest kid in the whole school getting licks for sitting there and watching a fight. Well, I didn't want to be separated from the rest of the guys because they were all my friends. They were all cousins to each other, so I was kind of the outsider. And so I went ahead and did the same thing. They said, Crozier, you didn't cry till after you got your licks. I said, well, yeah, but it didn't hurt that much. You know, it was the embarrassment was the problem. So from that, I learned to stay away from gangs, groups, and other hoods and so forth. But the prestige among all the other guys went way up. Time's up.
Ryan gave me that assignment to make sure, because he's normally sitting by Mr. Crozier. So Ryan's looking at me. His time's up. I'll jump into this too. I wasn't one of those kiddos that got in trouble in school because I had one of those dads that said, if you get in trouble at school, it'll be worse when you get home. So I tried to do what I could to stay out of trouble. So I don't have any recollection of getting in trouble in school, and that's probably because my parents were engaged in my education. They were engaged in making sure that I knew exactly what I was supposed to do, and I think that's something we've got to continue working on, is engaging parents in our schools to ensure that classroom discipline is under wraps for teachers as well as kids coming to school ready to learn and do their part. And so for me, I really can't say I got in trouble in school, Storme. I think my dad instilled a little fear in me, and so I didn't get in trouble. So, and I didn't skip any book reports either, Ryan. I'm not surprised that you did, though.
We said the political questions are later. Dr. Cox, is there a lesson or a moment that you remember?
Well, okay, so in high school, basically, I just didn't get in trouble because I was more of a pleaser and I tried to do the things right. So I was the senior class teacher's pet. I was the valedictorian, the vice president of student council, senior class president. I was that guy. But not to say that I wasn't ornery, because when I was a little boy, 5 or 6 years old, when we were learning to write, and I've actually told this before, but they would give you the dotted lines to write on and to follow to learn cursive. Well, I always went backwards. So to this day, I write my numbers and my letters all backwards. It looks really pretty when I do, but that's about as ornery as I get. So,
all righty. Thank you all.
Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing. Just a reminder, the Frontier will be fact-checking this debate, so if you are aware of Dr. Cox or Dr. Grace getting a demerit in elementary school, let us know.
I may have a teacher out there that would object. I just don't recall.
We'll see. We'll see.
I thought it was just dyslexic.
There we go. Somebody's phone went off. Okay. Let's turn those off. Is that, Mr. Crozier, is that yours? Wow, okay. Well, I think he just got a demerit. We're going to get your name in the doghouse for a minute. As we, let me filibuster through, I was trying to think of what song that might be. The next question is going to go to Mr. Walters. You need some, Storme, see if you can help make that happen there. Let me again remind you the importance of public debates, because you never know what's going to happen.
New York will ignore it.
We got it. All right.
Well, okay, thank you very much. As I said, we asked you not to make that last question political, and you all mostly made that happen. But now we're going to talk a little bit about politics. Mr. Walters, in Oklahoma and around the country, conversations about education policy and practices easily get politicized. It's Democrats this or Republicans that, and this race, and I'm afraid this debate, can get a little full of politics sometimes. But how do you keep partisan politics from disrupting the task of educating kids? How do you check yourself and know when you might be getting a little too political as an education leader?
So here's the way I would respond to that. The far left has got themselves involved in our kids' education. The far left has pushed their way into our schools and education policy. 30, 40 years ago, there was an emphasis on academic basics. We all remember reading, writing, arithmetic. That was the focus. The focus was to get skills to our young people where they could go out and be workforce ready. Well, the Democrat Party and the far left have gone so far beyond the pale that they have decided to introduce bizarre anti-American concepts into our schools. So in response to that, we have said we're not going to have that in our schools. We're going to have back to an emphasis of the basics. We want to maximize the potential of every child, because that is the best way as a teacher. That's what I try to do with every student in my class. I want each one of them to be successful and to put them in a position to be successful. And that's what we've got to get back to. And so what we've seen is a left-wing group that has injected themselves, and so the response is to keep this stuff out of our classrooms so we can get back to the basics.
Thank you, Mrs. Grace. 60 seconds to you. Same question. How do you know, if you get too political and you need to watch that as an education leader?
Well, thanks for the question. Absolutely. Education should not be political. When we look at what we need to be doing with our kids, we need to be focused on our Oklahoma academic standards. We need to be making sure that teachers are trained and ready to execute those in the classroom. And we need to be doing everything we can to make sure that we're meeting the needs of every learner. So those are the things that we need to be focused on. So I think that's the thing you've got to continue to check yourself with. You've got to have a group of accountability around you to help you keep yourself checked. But absolutely, education should not be a political issue. We should be focused on the basics. We should be focused on rigor for our high school kids and getting them also ready for career paths. So we've got to make sure that we keep those things out of our Oklahoma classrooms, stay focused on Oklahoma values, and make sure that we don't let politics sneak into the classroom.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cox. 60 seconds to you. Same question.
Yeah, so I've spent 28 years on focusing on the child, and really that's where the focus should be. So we keep politics out of the school, but also with that, I display conservative values with our schools, so we are able to keep certain things out. The indoctrination that we talk about and just inappropriate materials, we're able to keep those out because we focus on having conservative values in my community. So, but that's not political, that's just who we are. But really my campaign has actually been about how can we change the assessment system to a growth model and do away with the end of the year testing and really focus back on immediately changing instruction for teachers and allowing them to do their job. So those are the issues I'm talking about. Those aren't political issues. Those are things to make betterment for our children, which that should be our focus. So we do that, and we focus on trades, certification for our students in high school, and so those are the issues we should be talking about.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crozier. 60 seconds, and let's really eat that microphone. Yeah, thank you.
Tastes just like a banana. I call this cognitive dissonance. Politics, the emotional use of facts. And we've been divided before in this country on different things. Sometimes we let it go out of hand and get out of hand. It's called the Civil War, war between the states. We even had different names for the battles. The question is, what are we going to do with the free speech? Should we tell people that the room here is on fire and see how many people make it out? That's part of the question. Usually it's been 30, 30, 30. 30% to the left, 30% to the right, and 30% in the middle. It's undecided. So now it seems like it should be right down the middle. We have to be careful what we do as a country and make sure that our objectives are still freedom. Everybody has a chance. So I always like to use the example. It's pretty simple. I think you'll understand it. If you don't, I'll explain it later. One party says, why don't you get to work and make money so you can take care of yourself? The other party pretty well says, I can't work, I've got a bad knee, I've got a bad leg, and I can't do anything. I've got to be taken care of. Sorry, my time's up.
Thank you very much. Storm, next question to you.
Yeah, this next question will go to Dr. Cox first. Like other states, Oklahoma is facing a significant teacher shortage. Sure, there are labor issues across the economy, but a lack of trained teachers affects every community on the map. What's the best thing the Oklahoma legislature has done to address the teacher shortage, and what potential solutions would you bring to the table?
Yes, absolutely. We're in a crisis right now because 3,500 people are projected to retire and only 1,200 coming out of our universities to take their place. And right now, I'm looking for a special needs teacher, and there are several schools in our area that's doing that. So we are in a critical crisis right now, but as we raise the pay, I think that's important. Teachers just want to be valued, though, along with the pay. But I've been advocating for a minimum pay of $50,000, a graduated skill every 3 years where it goes up more than the $400 up to $1,000 a year beyond that. That will entice young people to come into the profession. Also, it will entice our current teachers to stay there and look towards maybe having better pay. But we've got to change the message and really value public education, put our teachers back up on the pedestal, and let them know that they are valued. That's the only way we're going to turn this around. With 3,500 emergency last year, it's just made it very difficult. But bless those teachers who came back to try to help us. We just need to have training and support for those teachers.
Mr. Crozier, same question, 60 seconds.
Well, I'm always at war with the HR groups, if that's what they call it now, because I think we can do a lot better job. So we used to be, when we were 65, you had to retire in Oklahoma, and teachers went to Texas for another 5 or 10 years. Then we got the age changed up, and by we, I mean mainly my dad did. He wanted to teach all 50 years, and he only got 49. So I sent out 500 letters to HRs all across the state, got 4 calls, and went 2 interviews. So there's something wrong with the HR process. Nebraska, as I understand, in the elementary schools, we can have young women teach the classes with 2 years of college, and they can get the rest of it correspondence or Zoom, which is what could be at Central. I talk with those people. We used to call them correspondence courses. So there is a big problem, plus on the pay. Some people here remember when the school teachers in Oklahoma City got paid a lot less than truck drivers. Now truck drivers are in demand, so I call them, well, how much do you pay? Oh, we pay $100. Oh, no, 100,000. So we got to do something in between. Look at the teachers, the money that they need, and get it for them.
Dr. Grace, what has the legislature done to try to fix this, and what would you do?
Sure. Well, thanks for the question. The legislature the last few years, since 2018, we've actually seen 2 great teacher pay raises, but that's not going to be enough. We're going to have to keep investing in education, and we've got to see education as an investment. Additionally, this year we saw a couple of bills. One, we saw that Representative McBride passed a bill in working with some other folks to get scholarships for our young people to be able to get part of their teaching, their degree paid for as they matriculate through. So those are things that are going to matter, and those are the things we've got to keep doing. One of the things I want to do is create our own Teach for Oklahoma program that would be rigorous and similar to Teach for America to make sure that we're infusing that into our classroom. But at the same time, we've got to incentivize our professionals that have been around a while to stay in this profession. That's another thing I would be working on. And again, making those partnerships with legislators to continue to do everything we can to incentivize this profession, both in the traditional route as well as continuing to allow multiple on-ramps into the profession. And we've seen some of that, but we've got to keep up with it. It's not enough.
Secretary Walters, 60 seconds.
You know, the best bill that I saw passed this year was a bill that Governor Stitt and I championed, and we had some great legislative leadership there, and that's the bill, the Teacher Excellence Bill. And this is a bill that would allow certain teachers to make up to 6 figures in a career ladder. Because here's the thing that always frustrated me, and I've got some of the best teachers that I've ever known here in the room tonight, that as a teacher, the ability to make more money, significantly more money, really comes in moving into an administrative position. And what I want is a career ladder so that our best teachers can make significantly more money and stay in the classroom. And then you can start building out mentoring programs. You can start building out co-teaching models. This is the way that we ensure that as teachers enter the profession, they get the development that they need, they get the support they need, they get the mentorship they need, but also they have the ability to grow in the profession, make more money, be in leadership roles, because we have some of the best teachers here, but what happens is they take other jobs, they move into administration. We have to do all we can to incentivize the best and brightest to stay in the classroom with our kids, because that's where the magic of learning happens.
Thank you very much. Dr. Grace, I have the next question starting with you. Let's talk about students for a second. Imagine that there somewhere out there is a teenager who's very bright and very smart and very nice, but for one reason or another, they've been having a bit of a tough time with school. I think we all remember middle school and high school, and it was a challenge, and I don't think technology has made it any easier all these years later. So you've got 60 seconds. Give that student a pep talk about life, the value of education, and their future.
Well, we want to make sure that you know that we have a lot of different career opportunities for you. So we got to make sure that you know as a student, if I were giving that student a pep talk, I'd want to make sure that they know that they can go to college, or that we can introduce trade certification to them and career tech, some of those certifications as well, career certifications. We've got to make sure that we begin looking beyond a high school diploma for our students. We've got to make sure that they're military ready, career ready, and workforce ready, or that they're ready for college. And so if I'm talking to that student, I want to make sure that they know every single opportunity out there. I want to make sure they know as a sophomore, you can have an internship experience and opportunity. And so as a junior, we can get you into a robust apprenticeship so that you can be ready for that workforce, because many students are looking beyond that, and maybe that's not the right piece for them to be looking at that next college piece. But we must make sure that we have lots of early high school, college opportunities for those students that are inclined in that way. So we've just got to make sure that we're missing it. And I would first sit down and talk with them and find out, hey, what's going on?
I think that's great. Secretary Walters, 60 seconds. Same question to you. Give us, what would you talk about in that pep talk?
Yeah, this is my favorite thing to talk about with kids. I've done this hundreds of times. Is I tell every student that I could possibly have the conversation with is, you're special. There's no one in the world like you, and there's never been anyone like you in history. I'm a history teacher, so I go there. And here's what I want you to know. That if you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to seek out a pathway for yourself and what you're good at, if you're willing to seek out a pathway down there, if you're willing to have core principles and live by those principles, you can do great things. And great things look different to every individual. Pathways are very different. But that's what history tells us, is that you can change the world. And changing the world might be you're the next president. Changing the world might be you're an incredible mother or father to some young, special kids. But you can absolutely change the world around you. You are special and unique and created in that way, and never give up. There will be times in life where there can be dark days, but it can always get brighter. Have faith and stay with those guiding principles, and you can accomplish great things in your life.
Thank you very much. Dr. Cox, same question to you. Give us that pep talk.
Yeah, actually, I have these conversations quite often, and basically it's when the child already feels bad about themselves and they're in the office talking to me. And so the purpose of us being in education is to help that child get everything that they want and push them and help them in the direction that they want. So that's why I think trade certifications are so important, because there's so many jobs out there that our students can go into in so many areas. So just because you're not good in math doesn't mean that you're not going to be really good on building a car or cosmetology or welding or things like that. So those are the conversations I have, because it's extremely important when they leave my office that they feel good about themselves and that they can go and accomplish things. But they have to know that they have that relationship already. And I think the relationships we build in schools, that teachers build and that administration builds with our students, is just so important. So they have that trust when we say, hey, everything's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. You know, we're going to help you through this, and when you leave us, you're going to be able to do awesome things in your life. You don't have to have awesome grades.
Thank you very much. Mr. Crozier, last but not least, 60 seconds. Give us that pep talk.
He knows where I belong, doesn't he? The young guy was acting out and causing trouble in the public schools and standing on squares. Some people know in this room what that means, and couldn't get things right, and he was in trouble, so they finally decided to put him in a private school. And almost immediately his behavior changed radically. He was good, he studied, he paid attention to what he was doing. So the principal wanted to find out, what changed your behavior? He says, well, when I came in and talked to you, I was changing schools, and I saw this guy nailed on a cross, and I thought, that's what they're going to do to me.
Rimshot, there we go.
There's a program called Interviewing. Interview the people, find out the hot spots. I did that in prison for 10 years. Sometimes there were setbacks, like one of my classes from California, I taught them how to do math. They all passed the SAT. One of them, after it was over, said, golly, now I can measure my drugs out right. Thank you.
Well, that's important. You always want to be able to measure those, right? Okay, that's the end of round one. Give us a round of applause for all the candidates. Good conversation. We're going to jump into round two, which is titled Classroom Culture. Storme, you have the first question for the panel.
Yeah, this will be a hand-raising question, kind of like the one we started this round with. One of the most contentious education issues during the 2022 legislative session was a proposal that stalled in the state Senate. The bill would have created education empowerment accounts to allow parents below a certain income threshold to use their child's portion of state education aid to help pay for private tuition or other education expenses. Show of hands, if that bill is proposed next year, would you advocate for it as state superintendent? Secretary Walters, we'll begin with you. 60 seconds, why?
Absolutely. I advocated for it this past year. I will always advocate for measures that help students. Empowering parents further in their kids' education and providing more freedom for families with education options is a good thing. Again, we have students all over the state that are all unique and all different. And so ensuring that parents have options for their kids so that they are in the best position to be successful is key. We need to continue to move the ball forward on this as a state. Again, I'm a public schools teacher, and my daughter attends a public school. We have some great public schools in the state. But we also have to make sure that if a kid's needs aren't being met in a certain environment, that the parents have more options for that child so that they can be in an environment where they're most successful. I believe no one knows best for a kid than their mom and their dad. And I believe they know exponentially better than a government bureaucrat. So I don't want the government telling you what your kid's education has to look like. I want parents to decide for their kids.
Why not?
Well, I'll jump in. Here's what I would say is absolutely I would support 100% every parent's right to choose the educational opportunity that best meets the need of their child. I feel like in Oklahoma we already have choice options. We have fantastic public school charters. We've got one of those superintendents in the room tonight, probably more than that. We've got some fantastic traditional public schools and some good public school virtual charters. At the same time, we've got incredible private schools across our state. But we also have already, by policy and funding, Lindsay Nicole Henry and Opportunity Scholarships, which do provide funds available for parents to be able to go to a private school. So I believe we are supporting those choice options already. And I also absolutely love that we have one of the most liberal homeschool policies of any state in the nation, which means that a parent absolutely can pick a homeschooling option for their child, and it's not regulated, and they can do as they need to. So for me, I feel like we do that. And in the particular bill that we actually saw, there wasn't enough accountability and transparency on the funds and making sure that they're getting to the right place and used for the right purpose, and that was part of my concern.
Dr. Cox?
Yeah, I'm absolutely for school choice and for parents to be able to take their child anywhere that they want to. But, you know, it's out there, and if I was making a six-figure salary to promote vouchers, I would not veer from that. I would not go away from that. I would stay on that topic, or I would lose my job. And so my place in this is that I'm running for state superintendent of public instruction. The money needs to stay in public ed, because how are we going to give all our money away to give to private entities, to other businesses, and not have the money left so that we can take care of the kids that are left? Because face it, we're going to have public schools, and we need to be able to fix those public schools, and we need the money within those public schools to take care of them. It is so important that we focus on the 95%, the 700,000 kids. I know there's 80,000 more kids, but they don't want this money. Homeschoolers do not want government in their business. Private schools do not want government in their business. So, all right, thank you.
We'll give Mr. Walters 30 seconds to follow up, but we do want to remind the crowd, please hold your comments to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little disappointed that you just paired to the talking points of the Democrat
I didn't
Party.
say your name.
Hey, I'm talking. I get my opportunity.
But I didn't say your name.
I mean, it's clear that you've been parroting the talking points of the Democrat Party that you've been a part of for years. So, yeah, I mean, of course, Democrats don't want more school choice. I want more school choice. I trust parents. Plain and simple, period, end of the conversation. I believe parents know best for their kids. I believe that all parents should have options, not just the wealthiest of parents. I believe that parents should have more opportunities for their kids so that their kids can be successful. We have got to put students first in these conversations. What is best for every kid is what the focus needs to be. That's how we move forward as a state and do the best for our kids.
Let's get Mr. Crozier, and then we'll come back to Mr. Cox real quick. Mr. Crozier, 60 seconds. The Oklahoma Empowerment Act, you said you wouldn't lobby for it as state superintendent.
No, I think everybody is entitled to an equal education. A lot of the churches we've had, the schools we had in the past were close to Baptist churches when Oklahoma was a rural area. So when it comes to freedom of speech, I always say I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. We need to put the money where the public schools are not hurt. Private schools can get tax credits. I still remember selling encyclopedias on the streets of Los Angeles. One day this guy was pretty tired. I was talking about selling encyclopedias. He said, I don't want any, and started following me down the street with a shotgun. There was these guys down the street in T-shirts and shorts, and they said, what's going on? I said, this guy's chasing me with his shotgun. He said, come join us. Well, we know who he is. So the gangs of L.A. saved me to go ahead so I could run for superintendent.
I'm not sure what just happened. Dr. Cox, 15 seconds to you, sir.
I don't either. I lost all train of thought, but here we go. So the secretary just said that I'm running a Democrat policy. There is no way that is. I'm running for state superintendent. And if you want somebody bold that's going to stand up and say the way it is and push for what we need in public ed, then I'm that person. I am unapologetic for that. I am not a Democrat. I do not push those issues that were just said by the Secretary. But there is a problem there. There is a conflict of interest when I'm paying taxpayer money for part of his salary, and then his other salary is to pay to go to the Capitol to actually push for vouchers. I mean, that's just the truth. And so if we can't sit up here and say the truth, then there's a problem with that.
Don't-
Mr. Walters, we'll give you 15 more seconds, and then we're going to move on.
Look, when I go around the state and I hear from parents, they want a better education for their kids. Again, if we're going to sit around here and just parrot the Democrat Party talking points, that's fine. The far left, the National Teachers Union, has dumped money into the state to run against me, okay? So yeah, that's great. If we want to get up here and have some of these Republican candidates just parrot the talking points of the National Teachers Union, the Biden administration. They don't want parents in charge of their kids' education. I do. I'm going to fight back against the National Teachers Union. I will fight back against the Biden administration. I will never back down for Oklahoma parents. I am riding with Oklahoma parents because nobody knows better for their kids than their mom or their dad. I will never back away from that position.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. You got the woe sign for the first time. Good job, Andy. Okay, thank you. We're going to go to 90-second answers for the next questions in this round. And Dr. Cox, I've got the first question for you. You are obviously quite proud to lead a small school district in rural Oklahoma, but the state superintendent is tasked with supporting and overseeing all schools. So with so many students in urban districts and mid-sized districts, brick-and-mortar charter schools, virtual charter schools, explain to us some of the challenges that those schools and students face that the students in your district may not.
Sure, and the beauty of it is that I am in a small rural school, which represents over 400 of our schools across the state. So I represent them. And my job wears many hats. So I already am versed in child nutrition, transportation, federal programs. I do everything within the school. So walking into the State Department itself, I know every department and what they should be doing. I know what they shouldn't be doing either. And as I travel to inner city and Oklahoma City, bottom line, they're trying to figure out how can we make or help our children learn. That's what we all should be doing. And whether you're a small or large school, you should be focusing on what can best help a child. And so it doesn't matter what size, and actually I'm really versed in public school finance, so I know the challenges that we have across the state with lack of funds and the efficiency of our school districts. So it's powerful that I come from a small school because I can actually see what we need in public education. I see what sits on my desk and what comes from the State Department, and sometimes it's just things that we have to push back on, like these surveys, these 6th and 8th grade surveys that some of you are aware about. We're putting things into our children's mind that shouldn't just be there. I'm out here to protect the innocence of our children. I'm going to be bold for you when I'm that state superintendent, and I will sit there at that front gate and I will work hard for our parents.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walters, same question to you. I'll just preface it. You've taught at McAllister Public Schools, and if I'm not mistaken, at Millwood Public Schools here in Oklahoma City as well. What are the different challenges faced by students in urban and more rural districts?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what we see is oftentimes in rural areas, it's really hard to attract teachers that specialize in different areas. In your more urban areas, again, a lot of times you have high poverty and you have a lot of resources, but there's a high population that it's hard to get those resources to. And this, again, is why we have to do the best we can to make sure parents have options, parents are empowered in their kids' education, but also that all teachers have the resources needed to be successful. I talk to teachers all over the state from rural, urban, and suburban areas. They go, look, I think that we need more discipline in the schools. I don't feel like I can teach because of all the disruptions in the classroom. I need to be better supported inside the school. This is why the governor and I felt it was so crucial to call for an audit of the State Department of Education, the first time in our history that department's been audited, because we want to make sure that every penny of taxpayer dollars is getting to the classroom, is getting to our teachers. Oklahomans have made a significant investment in education. And what is key is that those dollars are best spent for every Oklahoma child. And the way to do that is to drive that money into the classroom, make sure that teachers are getting that money, make sure that we're not growing government bureaucracy, make sure that we're not growing administration and administrative costs, but that we're getting it into the classroom. Again, inside the classroom, no matter where you go to school, if you have a great teacher, there's nothing in the school setting that is more likely to help you be successful as a child than a highly qualified, exceptional teacher. So we need to be doing all that we can to make sure that as many students in the state as possible, and not rest till every single one of them, have access to a high-quality teacher.
Thank you very much. Dr. Grace, same question to you. What are the different needs of students in smaller schools versus bigger schools?
Well, this is a complex issue, and I think it's important that the person as state superintendent understands that the needs of our rural schools and students are very different than those in our urban and suburban settings. They have challenges for access and opportunity for some of the advanced coursework. For some of those things are the things that our rural schools really have trouble with. And I also would say, you know, the State Department's a large agency, so overseeing 30 and 40 staff is not the same as overseeing 300 and 400 staff or 500 staff. It's a very different and complex thing. The systems are more complex as well. So I think we've got to understand, too, that the kids, we've got 60% of the kids in our state that live in poverty. So poverty across the board is an issue no matter what kind of school district we're talking about. But the poverty is different in our rural parts of the state than it is in our urban parts of the state. And so we've got to make sure that we have the opportunity. Even in the rural part of the state, they have a difficult time even accessing providers for some of those mental health services or just counselors or any of those things. So we've got to make sure that we're innovative and creative about how we meet the needs of those students. And resources are exceptionally important to teachers at every single level. But the larger the district, more often, the more resources they have, the more opportunity they have both for teachers and students. So we've got to make sure that our rural schools have some of those same opportunities and the teachers get the same thing, training, etc. That's the reason why I want to look at a restructuring of the State Department, because each district is different. Each district is unique, and we must treat each district differently, and we've got to walk alongside them and provide that support in a different way, whether it's rural, suburban, or urban.
I'm going to ask you just real quick. We're doing great on time. 15 seconds. You said you're going to look at a restructuring of the State Department of Education. What does that mean?
So one of the things I'd like to consider doing is some regional service centers across the state in the 4 regions of the state to, in more close proximity to our rural districts, be able to serve them in closer proximity and face-to-face, people that they can get in contact with immediately, as opposed to everybody being in Oklahoma City, which is sometimes hours away.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Crozier, 90 seconds, same question to you. Difference between urban and more rural school districts?
Well, having grown up in a rural school district with a small number of kids, the opportunities are limited. One of the ones I look back on is a lot of my relatives were all in the Navy, and I wanted to get a scholarship in the Navy, and I went to OU. They're already full, so I had to be in the Air Force and Army instead, which was all right. So you have to have opportunities for the rural areas. To me, the National Assessment of Education, which I was part of, Oklahoma and northern Texas, school districts need to be about a population of 50,000 to provide the right opportunity to go where you're going. Of course, my example is one summer we were working in Republican campaigns in '62, electing Henry Bellman, and I went to Northwest because my dad was teaching in Oklahoma City, and Elizabeth Warren was there. I didn't know her. She had to move to Massachusetts to become a U.S. Senator. The opportunity needs to be there. Oklahoma hadn't been big enough. We got an extra million people in about the last 10 years. We need to make education a priority and not just talk and give it lip service, reorganize it, like she was saying, so it works, and have the colleges, VOTEX, and everybody work together so they can come up with the best possible things we can. Personally, when I did the electric car business when I was 11, I also did the work on the Prius, and it was sold to Toyota. I felt pretty sad about that, but there's still things like the internal wing aircraft, real-time computers, and a bunch of other things we can do. We don't want to put IC chips in people's heads or forehands. So.
I probably agree with you on that. Okay, Storme, you have the next question. I'm hearing from our audio folks. Storme, if you can just boom and speak up a little bit, and Dr. Cox as well. I'm not sure what your microphone is, but maybe just boom a little bit more, get it up closer to your mouth. Storme.
Yeah, hey, I also want to say that we have chairs up front on this side for the folks standing in the back. There's a whole row open in the front if you'd like. This question, 90-second question, will start with Dr. Grace. You have financial and institutional support from what some may call Oklahoma's traditional education establishment, like the Directors of School Board Association and the Council of School Administrators. At the same time, folks talk about the need to adapt classrooms for curriculum in a modern world. What's working well in Oklahoma education now, and what's something that needs to change? 90 seconds.
Well, thanks for the question. I would say, first of all, I'm anything probably but a traditional superintendent, and I've really worked hard to continue to think out of the box and provide innovative experience for our students. And so when I think about what's got to change in Oklahoma education, What I think we've got to do is look very closely at our seat time rules. They are prohibitive to kids in being able to get some of the experiences we want. And what I mean by that is for our high school students, they really need an opportunity to have an internship as a sophomore and have a robust apprenticeship as their junior and senior year. HVAC, plumbing, some of these things, helping them get into a trade certification area. That's something that's got to change in Oklahoma education. We've got to loosen up some of that, allow districts to have schools that are schools of innovation to create some of these creative and unique pathways. We've got to continue to work really, really hard at giving these early college, high school opportunities beginning in freshman and sophomore year so that when they leave us, they already have an associate degree. So these are some of the things that absolutely have to change. We've got to get kids ready. Again, I'll say this. Graduation rate is fantastic, and we ought to be thinking about it. But we cannot stop at high school graduation. We must look beyond it. And looking beyond it means robust career pathways and development within the opportunity for high school, as well as kids having opportunity to get as many credit hours as possible. That is the first thing that's got to change, and it's got to change. Some of the other things are going well. The pandemic set us back. Our Oklahoma academic standards are rigorous. They are some of the best in the nation. Teachers need training and support to teach to those standards now.
Mr. Crozier, 90 seconds, same question. What's working well? What needs to change?
Well, there's a song we had in the 60s. We put everybody in little boxes, and we have a box here today. People are in it, and the classrooms are boxes, and the cars are boxes with wheels on it. So we put everybody in boxes. I think that needs to change. We need to incentivize people with like esprit de corps, always like what Dr. Cross used to say at OU. He's talking about the national champion football teams we used to have. Someday we'll have a university as good as the football team. Well, there are a lot of things we can do. Extracurricular activities help students a lot. They will be good at doing that. We want to do the best we can for all of them. And when my dad was gone every summer because I didn't have any pay at the time and had to go bale hay, and some people think this is systemic, I had to stay on the farm and make sure the cotton was chopped so we'd have the money in the fall so we could go to school and buy a new car or buy Christmas presents. So we really got to make up our mind what we're going to do. If you want to read those books, My Ship, Your Ship, you need to read those. Those Navy ships went from the bottom of the United States Navy to the top. As far as I'm concerned, we're on the bottom and we want to go to the top, and we can do it. And I'm still bothered because the superintendent canceled my dad's drama one-act play contest we had in Grady County because the people weren't getting enough football players.
Mr. Walters, you have support from the charter school advocates like the director of the Public School Resource Center and private school voucher proponents. Same question, what's working well in Oklahoma education and what's something that needs to change?
Yeah, what I think is right now, what I've seen that's been so encouraging is we've got families and parents all across the state that are getting very engaged in our schools and our education system. They're asking questions. We're seeing record attendance at school board meetings. They want to know what's going on in their schools. They want to see ways to get more engaged. They're concerned about what's being taught. They want to support their good teachers, and they want to be more involved. That is the absolute best thing that could be going on, is families more engaged in their kids' education. What I see moving forward is we've got to find ways to better engage those families. We need moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas sitting around the dining room table at night talking about what's going on in their kids' education. And again, this is why empowering parents is so key, and it's not just about choosing the schools, it's about choosing the pathway inside the schools. One of the best, most successful students I ever had was a kid that, he apologizes to me right before graduation because he's not going to go to college, and he ends up being a welder and has this incredible welding career. But you know what? He apologized because he thought, well, I thought to be successful you had to go to college. We have to continue to put parents in the driver's seat of their kids' education and allow them to say, look, maybe I want my kid in an internship or an externship. Maybe it's a career tech option in their junior and senior year. But those conversations, the more that we drive our schools to having those kind of conversations with parents and start choosing those pathways that best meet our kids' interests, we're going to see the potential unlocked for every individual learner across the state.
Dr. Cox, 90 seconds, same question.
Yes, well, I love seeing the crowds tonight, and I've been waiting 10 years for this to start happening. The empowerment of parents, people coming out to really show their support for our public schools. But my mission, and through this, is to change the entire landscape of public schools and to change the assessment. And I've already talked about the assessments, but I just think it's so important If we can do away with test prepping, teach the last 2 months of school all the way up till the last day, relieve the stress of teachers teaching to a test, and let them be creative and be able to work in their classrooms. And one thing I've really been talking about too is our special needs children with their IEPs, and we make them take a test that is totally inappropriate and borderline child abuse because they're set up for failure when they take those tests. So I want the IEP to actually gauge how the child is learning. And IEPs work if the parents are engaged, and they can change it if it's not working. So I think that is extremely important. And the other thing is the trades area that's been talked about. There needs to be more flexibility in high school to allow our students to be able to change out courses or be able to go to tech center even at a sophomore year in high school if they're focused on doing a trade. Wow, can you imagine a student at 19 years old making $60,000 coming out being a plumber or an electrician? It's just amazing what that can do for Oklahoma and our economy. So those are the two issues I talk about. Most of all, eliminating the A through F and really having an accountability dashboard so parents can actually see where their child is in the classroom, and that's where the accountability should be.
Thank you very much. Secretary Walters, next question is for you. You've had a vocal presence on social media in this campaign, posting cell phone videos from your car in which you often rant about, quote, woke policies. Specifically, you've made some generalizations about transgender students playing sports, and you're worried about them using the bathroom they feel matches their gender identity. But we've heard from former students of yours who are members of the LGBTQ community, and they recall you being a supportive ally as a teacher. Yet they're now a little bit repulsed and hurt by your campaign rhetoric today. What do you say to your former students who believe you've adopted a political persona and have forgotten how to be the compassionate teacher they thought you were?
You know, this is one of the unfortunate results of a far left-wing mob that is forcing this into our schools. Until 10 years ago, this wasn't an issue, okay? Schools have been dealing with students who have different issues for years and years. But what we've allowed is a far left-wing group that is out of line with Oklahoma values to dictate policies. The reality is Oklahoma schools are not going to go woke. Our schools are going to continue to hold conservative Oklahoma values that believes that every child, and like I told all those children, and I will tell any kid, they are precious gifts from God. They have unique talents. I care about every child. I want every Oklahoma child to be successful. At the same time, we have to champion every kid and ensure that our policies are what's best for every kid. Transgender bathrooms are not what's best for every kid. Allowing boys to go in girls' bathrooms is not safe for students. Period. That is a clear position. Oklahomans understand that. It's only the far left that thinks that that's a good idea. So I will absolutely always stand for policies that are best for all kids. I will absolutely love and care about every single kid. Every one of them is a gift from God, and they should know that, and I want them to know that. But we have to continue to not allow the far left to make dictates in schools that are not good for kids. It's not good for their safety. It's not good for academic performance, and it's not good for a school culture. We have to put kids first in our policy despite what the far left woke mob wants.
Now, just real quick, 15 seconds. When you say transgender bathrooms are not good, are you referring to the idea that a school designates a single-seat bathroom for trans kids to use? Is that a problem?
No. The boys' bathroom, there should only be boys in that bathroom. The girls' bathroom, there should only be girls in that bathroom. Schools around the state have done a great job of saying, listen, if there needs to be an accommodation, here's a private bathroom that a kid, that if there's an issue, go to that bathroom. Again, 99% of Oklahoma schools did this, no problems, no questions asked. We're not going to put kids in any kind of jeopardy or to put a policy in place that's not safe. So that's the boys' bathroom, only the boys should go there. Girls' bathroom, only the girls should go there. And there can be a private bathroom that will make sure that every kid is respected, every kid is given dignity, and every kid is allowed to be in that bathroom.
Dr. Cox, I'm going to give you a version of the same question. Where do you stand on the topic of school district policies regarding transgender students? Is this a top issue facing our state?
I think it's a top issue, but I don't think it affects every school district. And so in our school district, basically, we just use common sense when it dealt with it. If there was a child that needed to use a different restroom or they were sensitive to being in a restroom, then we would actually find one for them. I don't believe that boys should go in girls' restroom. And what I've been telling across the state is that if my 10-year-old granddaughter is in that bathroom and there's a man that goes in there just because they say that they're a woman that day, there's going to be problems with that. So there has to be common sense with what we do. During the Obama era, we were out there in the country saying that, hey, we'll have an extra bathroom. If that is the case, we'll have an extra bathroom. But the Obama era said you couldn't do that. So when President Trump came in, he stopped it all, and he allowed us to have common sense with the usage of bathrooms, which I thought was good and empathetic to all our children. But now we're back in the same case again with U.S. Department of Ed, Office of Civil Rights, and then with Joy Hoffmeister sending the letter out from them saying that we have to be sensitive to these different groups. And I think we should be sensitive to everybody. I think public ed is where we take care of everybody. We should look at these different social issues and do that. We should look at them as a child, and our basic thing is about learning. You know, I keep bringing it back to that. I mean, we keep trying to politicize things, but we just need to focus on a child as an individual and not what they bring with us. Those are outside issues that should come from the home and be taught in the home.
Thank you, Mr. Crozier. 90 seconds, same question. Where do you stand on the topic of school district policies regarding transgender students, and is this a top issue facing the state?
Well, we have to go back a ways, I think, and even talk to integration where we had separate restrooms for everybody. I barely remember that. Got regenerative feedback here. So most people didn't care at the time in Oklahoma. Some people did. So that finally went away. Problem to me, big problem, which it sounds ridiculous, is we got to have enough plumbers. The other thing is that some people are born with both. One of my friends, her name was Jan Turner, a state representative from Edmond, and her husband was a doctor too. She was working with a mental hospital down in Norman, and some people are born with both, hermaphrodites. And that caused so much psychological trouble in her mind that she committed suicide. They'd put it with the guys, and the guys would rape it, and they'd put it with the women, and it would rape the women. So there is a problem with other things like that are genetic problems. Part of it, I think, is we're on the jet stream from where the atomic bomb blasts were before the end of World War II. All the Army people who saw those and witnessed it all died of cancer. I'm not so sure that it couldn't change some DNA on people and make them do other things. Of course, I always thought the girls had an advantage. They always got the best clothes and the best food, you know. So maybe I was reincarnated. I don't know. I can't tell for sure. But I like what the French say about men and women, vive la différence. And I don't believe in total equality. I believe in equal opportunity and everybody going after what they can. This problem is going to be around, but everybody that did life, liberty, and fraternity like the French had a revolution. They chopped people's heads off. And in Russia, they killed everybody that they didn't agree with.
Zoot the Lors. Okay, Dr. Grace, 90 seconds to you. Where do you stand on the topic of school district policies regarding transgender students?
Well, we've already seen some things pass in the legislature, and so part of the job of the state superintendent will be ensure that the accountability is there on those things that the legislature passed. At the same time, I don't know that this has been a broad-scale issue across our state. This is a perfect example of how urban and rural districts differ and some of the unique challenges that they come up with. I think it's already been stated, the majority of our school districts took care of this as they dealt with each family and child one-on-one as things came up. And so, you know, I don't know that it was a broad-scale issue, but the legislature has put some things in place. I'm going to always believe that policies need to be handled at the local level with locally elected officials and school boards, and that's where they need to be handled, and they need to be dealt with there. We've also got to remember that we shouldn't be alienating any child on any side of this issue, and every child needs to be respected and needs to feel, has already been described, special in our school. They need to believe that they belong there and that they're coming there for learning. At the same time, we've got to be careful about issues seeping into the classroom. So we've got to make sure that our schools are safe environments. They've got to be environments where kids can come and learn and stay focused on academics and not some of these other things. But I'm going to always stand that we need to have locally elected officials, those closest to the issue in their own community, solving these issues through their policies. But I support any laws that the legislature passes and would make sure that we hold accountability for those as state superintendent.
Thank you very much. I think, Storme, I made a mistake. I guess I have the next question for Mr. Crozier first as well. The state superintendent is the chairperson for the Oklahoma State Board of Education. Current Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister has been criticized by other board members for saying she has the ability to abstain from votes and for allegedly controlling meeting agendas in a way that can limit what items might be brought up for discussion. Do you support those positions as a state superintendent, or would you have a different philosophy?
Well, in political science, there seems to be a trend, even with city councils, county commissioners, and other people, to limit debate. They only want to discuss certain issues, and that, to me, is not fair. When I knew the Superintendent of Public Instruction did have a vote on the college regents, and was in privy to some of these people, how they got appointed to be college presidents. One of the things that we changed was changing a law degree to a PhD, which made you available to be a president of the colleges around the state. The reason we did that is because they couldn't get enough money, couldn't build enough buildings, so forth. So, and Dad helped put George Nye in at UCO. The roads got paved, the buildings got built, and the contractors were happy, and the world goes on.
Thank you very much. Dr. Grace, 90 seconds to you real quick. Same question. Do you support the idea that the state superintendent only sets the board agenda and that you don't have to vote if you're present at a meeting?
Okay, sorry, I kind of got lost there for a minute, so I'm glad you repeated that.
No worries.
Well, you know, again, I'm not sitting in that position, so I don't know all the rules that go with the chairman, but we have seen chairs of other boards abstain from votes or not vote in certain situations. So I think that's something that is allowed and is something they do. When it comes to creating an agenda, hopefully there's collaboration. And so, you know, while you might have the entire ability as the chair to create that agenda, I'm going to always believe that we need to collaborate with our board members in the best way possible to put forward an agenda that matters. And so, you know, the number one goal is going to be focused on kids and school and moving education forward. And that's what it's got to be about. No matter if you're the chair of the board or a member of the board, we've got to stay focused on moving Oklahoma academics forward and doing what's best for Oklahoma students and Oklahoma schools across the state. That's what I think needs to stay the focus of the person that's the chair of the board.
Thank you very much. Dr. Cox, 90 seconds to you, same question.
Yeah, so basically most school boards across the state have a policy for putting things on the agenda, and it's typical for members to actually approach the president and put that on the agenda. That's pretty much process, and that's the way it is at the state level, at the state superintendents. As far as abstaining or voting, all members have a choice not to vote or abstain if they want to. That's just the privy of a board member, so I don't see anything wrong with that, but I do think it's extremely important that the state superintendent be able to collaborate with the board members, and if there are pressing needs that needs to be on there to discuss that will actually help a child, I think it's important that those go on there to be discussed. And I think all members of the state board, just like board members, be valued for what they're there for, and that is to help develop policy. So I don't have a problem with abstaining, and I don't have a problem with the process of putting things on there, but I think there needs to be complete collaboration between the state superintendent and that board.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walters, same question to you, 90 seconds.
Joy Hoffmeister has been an absolutely abysmal state superintendent. She has been absolutely terrible. She is a far left-wing Democrat that has been anti-charter schools, anti-school choice. She hasn't supported innovation and support for our teachers. She has led a giant bureaucracy over there that has continued to grow and not done things in the best interest of our kids. Joy Hoffmeister has tried to push things on board agendas and not work with others because she hasn't been putting our kids first, she hasn't been putting parents first. So I want to ensure that whoever the next state superintendent is, I want it to be me, that we are going to be very open and transparent with parents on what we're doing, and that everything we're doing is for the best interest of kids. And so if what you're doing is for the best interest of kids, you're going to be transparent. You're going to want to talk with other board members. You're going to want to build that coalition. But if what you're doing is antithetical to school choice, if what you're doing is antithetical to putting parents in the driver's seat of their kids' education, if your main goal is to grow bureaucracy and far left liberal policies, you will act exactly the way Joy Hoffmeister has. So that has to be key with our next state superintendent, that they will be transparent and they will do all they can to put students first in every decision they make.
So just real quick, yes, no, abstaining from votes, is that okay?
No, it's not okay. You're the chairman of the board, you're not going to vote? I mean, it's outrageous. It is her shirking her responsibility to the state of Oklahoma, to the kids of Oklahoma. So it's playing her political theatrics with our kids. Yeah, it's absolutely not okay.
Thank you very much. Storm, quick bonus question.
All right, this will be a show of hands only. Do you believe the Oklahoma legislature should give the State Department of Education authority to subpoena people during investigations of alleged district and educator misconduct? Should the Department of Education be able to subpoena folks during those investigations?
Okay, that sounds like a no, maybe? That's for everybody. Hand raise. Yes, if you think they should.
I'll start by saying this. I think it's important to make sure that if you're in charge of accountability of some of these things and you're trying to investigate to find out what's happened, you need to have the ability to make sure that you can interview folks that you need to interview to get to the bottom of things. If that requires subpoena power, then yes. I think we've seen at times where people have sort of stonewalled and not provided documents perhaps, or maybe not provided an opportunity for conversation. If you're investigating, you've got to be able to have conversation and have access to the documents and things you need. So if that requires subpoena power, then I'd say yes, they need to do that. Maybe it's a limited scope, but I'd have to have more specifics and no. But I think there is, if the challenge is there and the charge is there to be responsible for these things and then have to be the one to be held accountable for that accountability, you need to have some opportunity then.
Okay, yes or no, real quick, 10 seconds. Anybody, yes, no?
Yeah, I would say I would want to meet with the Attorney General and discuss this. I wouldn't want to grow the State Department of Ed, but here's the thing. Student safety is paramount. So whatever the recommendations are from the Attorney General to help put an end to any kind of sexual misconduct in our schools, I would support, but I would not want to grow government. I wouldn't want to grow the bureaucracy, but I would want to work with the Attorney General to figure out what is the best way to prosecute sex offenders in our schools, and that's what we need to do. Whatever that is, that's what we need to do.
Mr. Cox, 10 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. I would want to work with the local district attorney because you don't want to impede their investigation. State Department could go in and actually hurt the rights of those people that are doing the wrong things, but absolutely, we need to go after these pedophiles and those people that are in our schools, but it has to be at the district attorney level, and the State Department has to have the teeth to go after their certification.
Thank you very much. Mr. Crozier, yes or no only?
You just went yes or no with no comments?
That's a yes or no question.
No.
Okay, Storm, we're going to go on to round three. Quick round of applause. We're running a few minutes behind, but it's a good conversation. Our final round is called Extracurriculars, and we're going to ask each candidate a question regarding their record and background. We're going to try this hand raise yes or no again. Oh, we got an exodus of people. It's dinner time. Storm.
Yeah, we've discussed a lot of important topics tonight, and because Trace and I believe that public debates matter, we wanted to ask you, raise your hand if you'll commit to debating again if this race goes on to a Republican runoff, and if there's, when you face a Democratic nominee. Yes?
That's all hands.
Great.
Awesome. Terrific. For this round, each candidate will only answer the question posed to them. You'll each have 90 seconds. Storm, for Mr. Crozier.
Mr. Crozier, you previously ran for State Superintendent of Public Instruction in 2006 with a platform point of making textbooks bulletproof to protect students in the event of a school shooting. Is that still one of your goals, or can you think of any ideas that are more legitimate in keeping Oklahoma students safe in the classroom?
When you have a lone wolf come into the class, like if you had somebody come in right now and you turned around and looked at the door and thought about it, you'd already be dead. So that was the idea behind the textbooks. It came from a young guy that was up at Fort Gibson, shot in the back with his backpack on, and the bullets didn't kill him. My sister lives in Fort Collins, Colorado. Their kids played with the ones at Columbine. Go back further in World War I, people would carry their Bibles on their chests when they go into battle. So the answer is still for that, but we're going to have to do things, unfortunately, probably like the prisons where I was. It's hard to break out of a prison unless you're in Virginia. It's also hard to break in. So you can keep it safe. You need to watch the doors. To me, I wanted to reorganize all the principals and superintendents like city managers in city, get our National Guard and veterans at least for a half day to drive a school bus if possible, and check students and stuff coming in. You can't keep the drugs from coming in, but anything that's metallic, machetes, machine guns, pistols, things like that, you can keep them from coming in. If that's what we have to do to keep them safe. And then back in the 60s, those of us who read all the sci-fi books, would say you could probably check the words on computers if they existed that good to find out where the hate was coming from. The commies in South America used to say what they would do, and nobody believed them. Finally, we started reading their notices on the doors and stuff. They did exactly what they said. To me, the devil tells you what he's going to do, and it's up to us to stop it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cox, I have the next question for you. This is your third time running for position of state superintendent. You ran against Joy Hoffmeister in 2014 and 2018, both times as a Democrat. This election cycle, you are running as a Republican. What was the reason for changing parties, and what do you say to Republican voters who believe you are the walking definition of what they call a rhino, a Republican in name only?
Absolutely. So I jumped out there 10 years ago when the Janet Barisi thing came up, and I was a Democrat at that time, but at 18 years old, I was a Republican. My family was, and out in rural Delaware County, there was probably a handful of separate Republicans. To vote, you actually had to be Democrat to be part of the process, and so I moved from there to Mays County, same thing. Cherokee County, it's finally becoming Republican there. And so when I ran, I didn't know about party. I just knew there was a problem, so I was going to jump both feet in to take care of our kids. And actually, because of the Republican support that I had, I was within 90,000 votes, 5% of beating her for that position. So I had a very conservative platform that I ran on, and they saw that. And actually, the Republicans were saying, "You're Republican. What are you doing a Democrat?" And so the Monday following the last election, I waited a week so I could do an intellectual change instead of emotional, and I pushed the button and went back to the Republican Party because that fit my life and my values. And so I didn't know I was going to run until I saw who my opponents were going to be, and I did not want them to be the state superintendent, and I knew I had to protect kids. That's the only reason I'm running, is to be out there to protect kids, and that's it. And Republicans across the state see that in me. There's very few limited that say, "Are you a rhino, and will you explain?" And once I do, they say that makes sense because the old Democrats in the country are now the Republicans now. But this is my value, and this is where I'm at, and this is where I'll be for the rest of my life.
Thank you very much. Storme.
Yeah, Dr. Grace, this question is going to be to you, and it's going to provide some context, so it may be a little long here. You became superintendent of Shawnee Public Schools in 2016. Along with other district officials, you have faced criticism after former boys basketball coach Ron Arthur was arrested and charged with crimes relating to sexual activity with a student who had just graduated. Other allegations have come to light with additional former students. An investigation revealed several admonishments in Ron Arthur's employment file for other misconduct between 2007 and 2020. Now, several of those events occurred before you became superintendent, but some occurred after. It was reported that you asked the school board to terminate Arthur's employment in 2018, but they did not follow your recommendation. District parents want to know why your request fell short and why more was not done to protect students. Now, we know your attorneys don't want you to say much, but voters want some sort of clarity about how this man remained employed by your district even after you knew he was a problem.
Well, thanks for the question and the opportunity to clarify. First, let me make it really clear. There's nothing more important in our schools than student safety. And we must continue to be very deliberate about making sure that certifications are suspended and revoked when these kinds of things happen. We must continue to do that. I'm sure you understand in this particular situation, there's still pending litigation around it. I'm very limited in what I can say about the specifics of the situation. Also, we have laws around employment files which protect them and the contents of them. What I can tell you is there's a 3-page response letter on our district website where I stated and shared that there have been some things that were misconstrued around that situation. So I can't get into the specifics of it because of the law that protects employee personnel files. As state superintendent, I think it would be really important to sit down with the legislatures and legal counsel and make sure, are there things within the laws around employee files in these situations where there should be absolutely more ability to be transparent with families and with folks. So all I can say to you is there are some things that are misconstrued, and I've always had an absolute zero tolerance policy when it comes to student safety and anything around students. And so I don't support and condone anything that Mr. Arthur did in this particular situation, and we took action that we could within the confounds of the law based on the situation and the evidence that we had.
Dr. Grace, I just want to ask you to clarify, what types of things were misconstrued and by whom? By the public, by the school board, by you? Who did the misconstruing and what was misconstrued?
Well, again, I can't get into the specifics of this because of particular legal parameters, but I can tell you that the particular deputy actually didn't know some of the aspects of the personnel file and misconstrued how many events and those sorts of things. So I really can't get into specifics beyond that, though.
No, I appreciate it. I just, for the journalists in the room, we were not sure who you meant misconstrued what. Mr. Walters, I have the final question of the night for you. Let's talk about GEAR funds. GEAR funds are the governor's emergency education relief funding, which came from Congress during the pandemic. Governor Kevin Stitt asked you to help coordinate the distribution of about $8 million through a program you all named Digital Wallet. It sounds fancy, and it was intended to reimburse lower-income families for education expenses during the pandemic. Significant concerns have been identified regarding the oversight of that money, and on the one hand, there seemed to be a blanket approval process for submitted expenditures, but then on the other hand, not all the money got distributed to Oklahomans. I think about $2.9 million had to be sent back to the federal government. So did you learn any lessons from any mistakes made during that process, and how can you convince voters to trust you to manage a significantly larger budget with the State Department?
So when I came in to be a cabinet secretary in September 2020, the first thing I did, and the first thing I would do as state superintendent, I looked over every decision, looked over every contract to make sure that every taxpayer dollar was accounted for and that every program was working for our kids. During that point in time, I found a contract where a vendor was saying that they were doing something, and I began to look at the reports coming in and saw that they were working outside their contract. They allowed expenditures to happen that is said clearly in their contract they were supposed to not allow to happen. It was their responsibility. We have taken legal action against that vendor. I will always do that. The governor and I are dedicated to ensuring that taxpayer dollars are used the way that they're supposed to be. We are dedicated to ensuring that vendors are held responsible. I've taken on that vendor. I've taken on all the textbook companies that have critical race theory in their textbooks. I told them, if you put this in your textbooks, you're no longer going to do business in the state of Oklahoma. This vendor is being held accountable for not upholding their end of the contract. That is the way that I operate. I come in, I'm going to ensure that taxpayer dollars go the way they're supposed to, and I'm going to go into the State Department of Education. I'm going to audit every penny. I'm going to ensure that it's getting to our students. I'm going to ensure that it is used to help students further their education to a career path. I'm going to make sure there's no liberal ideology in it. And then I'm going to make sure that we're doing all that we can to make sure that every kid is being successful and that is fully transparent with their parents. Because we've got to make sure that everything we're doing is there for parents to see what's going on.
And just real quick, who selected that vendor? What was that process?
That was before I was in government. So that was previous to me. The previous Secretary of Education and the governor went out to look to find ways to get money directly to parents to help them out. Remember, schools were shut down. So the program was to ensure that low-income families had the ability to do online learning while their schools were shut down. So a vendor was chosen. And that vendor was the one that was allowing these expenditures to go on, which is why now we're engaged in the legal process as a state to hold that vendor accountable for any kind of funds that were misused. But that was a process put in place because Governor Stitt wanted to ensure that low-income families could access online learning during the global pandemic.
Thank you very much. Round of applause. Final round of questions there. We've got 90 seconds for closing remarks from each of you. Same order as last time. Dr. Grace, kick us off.
I think I turned it off and turned it back on. So thanks for the opportunity to be here. Thanks for putting this on tonight. Thank you for a great crowd of folks that are obviously interested in this race. We appreciate you being here. I think we all understand that what's at stake here. We really have to make sure that we are headed the right direction with Oklahoma education. When we think about the future of our kids, Oklahoma students are the future for our state. And education is the bedrock of career development and workforce and economic development. We must make sure that we raise our educational outcomes in Oklahoma. We must make sure that we are meeting the rigor of our Oklahoma state standards. We must make sure that we look at better systems and measurements. We've got to do growth measurement tests so that teachers know. One of the things we have to make sure we do is to continue to advance every student that's challenged, and we must challenge every advanced student. So we've got to look at every student as an individual. We've got to get better about personalization of learning. That's what parents want as well. And we've got to make sure that we are very, very focused on teacher recruitment and retention. And we've also got to continue to lift our educational standards for our students. But teachers need resources and training as well. We have a lot of work to do in Oklahoma education. And I think it's time that we have somebody that has the experience of running a complex school system, a K-12 system, somebody that's done every single part of a system. And I'm that leader. I'm that person who's served in rural, urban, and suburban districts. And I think that's what we need, somebody who gets the whole picture in education. But we've got work to do, and I think it's going to take somebody that's serious and experienced and knows how to get the job done. And I'm that person, and I'd ask for you to consider voting for me on June 28th.
Thank you very much. 90 seconds, Mr. Crozier. Tell us about the 60s.
About the 60s, all right, if you're ready. Politician out here was on the road on 44. It was icy, and the big curve that was built up here where you always have a wreck smashed and went off the side where the old Penn Square Bank used to be, and ended up in heaven with St. Peter. St. Peter had 2 books. He said, hey, your name's in both books. You get a choice of what you want to do. He says, all right, well, let's look at heaven first. So we went around heaven, had a good time, good food. Everybody was nice to each other. He says, this is really nice, but, you know, it's kind of boring. I want to see what the other one looks like. So he got on the elevator, went down, 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 opened the door. The devil shook hands with him. He said, hey, let's come look around. We had drugs, gambling, wild women, anything you can think of. And the politician said, this is more what I'm used to. I'm going to go tell St. Peter where I went up. So he got on the elevator, went up, 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 up. St. Peter said, now, once you go there, you have to stay there forever. This is an eternity deal. Went down, got hotter and hotter. This time it was different. The elevator opened up. The devil grabbed him by the neck, started beating him up, punching his eyes out. And he says, wait a minute. This is not what I saw. Oh, you saw the campaign commercials.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crozier. 90 seconds, Mr. Cox, closing statements.
All right, awesome job, Bill. Awesome job. That's funny. So, wow, so add 90 more to mine.
Top that.
There's no way. There's no way. So, you know, I'm very humbled to be here tonight, especially to be able to go out and really advocate for our public schools and our kids. And that's what I'm doing here. Experience has to matter. Being forged by fire, being through everything, the economic downturns, working with public school finance, you know, working with all different issues that come about in public schools, it's just so important. And you know I hit a nerve a while ago talking about the $120,000 to push vouchers. I know I did, but I think it's important to talk about those things. And that's such a minuscule thing. Because when I'm in there, I have to have tough skin to be state superintendent. Anything that comes across me, you can't have reactions to it. You've got to be able to step back and be able to handle and figure out how to solve the problems. You know, and we talked about the CARES money, the squandering of the $1 million of the CARES money. You know, that I don't think it's intentional at all. But I think that's where experience matters, because if I was in control of that money, like I do in my public school, every single penny is accounted for. In fact, we don't even get the money back unless we spend it correctly and it's already looked at. So I just want to say experience has to matter, and then trust, because I'm trusted all across the state to do what I do, by superintendents, by teachers, and everywhere. And I just want you to know I will work extremely hard for you, and we will get back to the basics of learning. So last thing is, I just want you to check the box for Cox when you go to the polls next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walters, 90 seconds to you to close us out.
I wholeheartedly reject Joe Biden's view of American education. I don't believe that our kids are victims. I don't believe that our kids need to be injected with anti-American curriculum. What I believe is that every student is capable of greatness. What I believe is that every student is created by God with certain talents, and that we need to be doing all that we can to ensure every child has every potential for success in our schools. That's why you hear me champion school choice. That's why you always hear me championing the voice of parents, because when I go around the state of Oklahoma, what I hear are parents that want better for their kids. I hear parents that want their kids to be successful in life. What I hear are parents that want to support their great teachers. And what I hear is a pure rejection of this belief that America has failed, that America is a failure. What I hear is this belief that we can be great, that Oklahoma can be great, that our conservative values can be borne out in our schools, and because of our conservative values, we can have the greatest schools in the state, in the country. We can be a leader, and it's not because we want to be a leader for the ranking. It's because we want to be a leader because of what that means for our kids. So you're going to continue to hear me fight back against the Biden administration, the National Teachers Union that's out attacking me right now, because guess what? I reject their vision. I believe in the vision from what I hear from parents across the state of Oklahoma, that we can do better for our kids, and that's what I want to see for every single Oklahoma child, is the best education possible.
Thank you very much. That concludes tonight's debate. Thank you to the candidates. Thank you to our sponsors. Public debates matter. Thank you so much, News 9, for streaming this, Storm, for this whole thing we've been doing. I think we're going to do this again in the runoff in the general election. Thank you to the Frontier, all of our other friends in the media who've been a part of this and have shared this. Election day, Tuesday, June 28th. Nondoc.com will have a bunch of previews coming up. I know all our other media partners will. Have a good night. Thank you so much. Public debates matter.